Even me handling my microphone just creates music that is actually starting to annoy me. So we're going to change it. It's October, it's time to make some Halloween voices. So, just gonna switch it over. Maybe this'll work out. But this isn't very Halloweeny. 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 Yeah, I'm gonna stop now. Sorry about that. Just messing with it. Pay no mind. Okay, let's
see this one. Okay, this one is called Alien. I mean, this sounds nice, but not terrifying. They used to have a sound on here that made you sound like Venom, but I don't see that anywhere. All these YouTube notifications popping up. Stop doing that during my stream! So, let's see. Is the Venom sound still here? We have Kong. That might work out as a monster sound.
I think we found it. Yes, we will. Rusty Seabrook, Venom is here. And if it's the last thing we ever do, Jameson and the Spider are going to pay. Now, that voice sounds good and all, but the voice I created for Null is far better. But let's get down to the nitty-gritty of it all. Welcome to yet annoying... hold on. Okay. I had to take my voice out of my ears because it was getting kind of difficult for me to actually speak full sentences naturally without it messing up how I sound. But now that we have a bit of a rough idea, let's go ahead and get this party started, shall we? Let me go ahead and link this on my Twitter, so that fellow voice actors can hear this as well. Oh, interesting. Ooh, this is interesting. Borderlands is having an event going on right now. Community Carnage Challenge #1. Maurice needs body parts rich with Tront DNA for research. Kill Captain Tront, General Tront, and Captain Haunt a collective total of 500,000 times. And a shiny new head will be your reward. This seems like an entertaining endeavor. I may have to take part after this stream is over. But let's go ahead and link this video so all can hear it. I will say this much, it's a good day to be a gamer. Now let me just link certain people towards this. Hashtag voice acting. Hashtag voice actor. Yes. Everything appears even better than before. So, I put forth a poll asking people what they wanted for me to do today. Decided between playing Deathloop and chilling, or doing more voices and chilling as well. And after a series of votes, it appears that doing more vocal training was the far better choice. I can always count on my community to make the hard-hitting decisions. That is why I am proud of you. But good afternoon, everyone. I hope we all have a good time today. We'll be messing with a few voices here and there, creating some new ones with this voice modulator program that I am so very proud of. And then we'll see how things go from there. I tell you one thing, though. I am so glad this sickness that used to be in my body is completely gone now. Far too annoying. Just laying up in bed wondering when this thing will pass over. Wondering if I'll ever be able to make another video again. If I was ever going to use my voice. Those types of thoughts just popped up every now and again. But despite this sickness's best efforts, I remain undeterred. What I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to switch this voice over to the one I created for Bellion. Alright. This seems far better than what I had before. No dual pitches to interfere with the voice itself. Overall, I believe this shall be a far better voice for me to use for the next series of minutes. Have you ever heard of the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise? I thought not. It's not a story the Jedi will tell you. It's a Sith legend. Darth Plagueis. Darth Plagueis was a Dark Lord of the Sith, so powerful and so wise, he could use the Force to influence the midichlorians to create life. He had such a knowledge of the dark side that he could even keep the ones he cared about from dying. The dark side of the Force is a pathway to many abilities some consider to be unnatural. He became so powerful. The only thing he was afraid of was losing his power, which eventually, of course, he did. Unfortunately, he taught his apprentice everything he knew. Then his apprentice killed him in his sleep. It's ironic. He could save others from death, but not himself.
Is it possible to learn this power?
Not from a Jedi. Imagine being told this story if you were Sidious and Vader, and Sidious, being the ever-sadistic individual that he is, just tells this story to Vader over and over and over again, just to annoy him, just to fill him with rage. That actually seems like a dark side thing to do. Just telling your apprentice the same story over and over and over and over again, to the point where they get so mad and upset about it that they're just plain annoyed and filled with rage. I actually think that's a tactic that some of the Sith use. They annoy their apprentices, the masters that is. They annoy their apprentices and just fill them with rage, which helps in their training. So I wouldn't be surprised if Sidious just told this Darth Plagueis story to Vader when Vader wasn't able to ignore him, such as being stuck in a Bacta tank, and he's just forced to listen to his masters talk about this story over and over and over again. I can imagine this being annoying to Vader. Here's something that I kind of wanted to do real quick. Avatar, The Last Airbender. No, not Avatar, The Last Airbender, just The Last Airbender script. I want to read just how stupid this story is. But we're going to use voices to try and make it slightly entertaining. Oh my goodness, I'm reading it now and it's already stupid. How did this intro monologue even get a pass and made oh my goodness, I just completely forgot just how dumb this Last Airbender script is. And I'm gonna read it. I kind of want to read the entire Last Airbender script now. I might just do that, where I just read lines or an entire script in a brand new voice. That might just be what I do. But the voice, oh my goodness, oh no. Okay. I'll be reading The Last Airbender.
I'll be reading The Last Airbender. Hopefully the voice came through fine then. Hold on, I want to make sure my voice is good before I start reading this script out. It is stupid just from the start of it because it conflicts with how the show is. One thing I don't understand is how people will make live action.
One thing I don't understand is how people will make live action adaptations of famous shows, but they try to put their own spin on the mannerisms of people and how people behave and real dumb stuff like that. So the whole vibe I get when I look at this script right now is this vibe of, we need to speak to the children, but we don't need to put it in a way that children can understand. We gotta sound more grandiose than we actually are. That's the vibe that I get when I look at this script. Okay, so it starts with narration, and not Avatar the Last Airbender, but The Last Airbender is basically exposition the movie. It is entirely exposition, and it's actually kind of condescending because it doesn't expect people to get information and glean any details as the movies goes on. It needs to be explained to everyone. And I feel that's far more insulting to fans of the original series than anything else. Okay, let me get started. So, we have Qatar here narrating. 100 years ago, all was right with our world. Prosperity and peace filled our days. See, this slide right here, it just seems so overly fluffy. Prosperity and peace filled our days, and it was filled with sunshine and rainbows, and nothing bad ever happened. No one ever died. We never lost. The bad guys were defeated, and the good guys always won. That is how life is here on this earth. That's how this opening line sounds to me. The 4 nations, water, earth, fire, and air nomads, lived amongst each other in harmony. Okay, so why not just say 4 nations of water, earth, fire, and air? Why do you specifically point out the airbenders, the air nomads? Why is it the air nomads get their own separate specific title? Like, you don't have the water tribe, you don't have the fire nation, you don't have earth kingdom in this introduction. You have water, fire, you have water, earth, fire. But air nomads get their own secondary title right next to their name. And air nomads is in capitals here. Air nomads is capital, while water, earth, and fire are just off on their own. As if air has its own, air of superiority around everyone else. You gotta differentiate. The 4 nations, water, earth, fire, and air nomads, lived amongst each other in harmony. Great respect was afforded to all those who could bend their natural element. So, here's the thing about Avatar, The Last Airbender, the series. Sure, people look at you slightly different if you could bend an element, but it wasn't like a special social class that separated people if they were able to bend elements. So this whole line of great respect was afforded to all those who could bend their natural element. It makes it seem like if you were a bender, then you were of a higher status than anyone else, regardless of what village you came from. So this whole line right here just doesn't really resonate with me, because we all know that if you're a bender, then it's not like you're so much better than everyone else. You're just a person who bends. That is what that means. Great respect was afforded to all those who could bend their natural element. The Avatar, but for somewhat strange reason, they call him the Avatar. And it's dumb. The way they pronounce names in this is completely stupid. Like, Avatar, Ong, Sokka. Katara manages to keep her name normal, and Zuko manages to keep his name normal, but Avatar is Avatar. Like, they're adding some grandiose enunciation to it that is completely unnecessary. If Shyamalan actually watched the series, actually watched the very first episode, he would know how to pronounce all these people's names. But it's in this movie where everyone's names is just mispronounced. Like, Uncle Iroh is Uncle Iroh. Like, you can't say Iroh? Everyone called it Iroh. Even Iroh called his name Iroh. So it was completely unnecessary for the inflection change and enunciation change on pretty much the majority of the main characters here. Can you imagine if they continued with these series of Last Airbender movies and we actually got introduced to Toph? And they would just they wouldn't call her Toph, they would just call her Toph. Or just try to change up her name entirely because we can't be 100% accurate to this film. But let me continue. We are still on the opening crawl credits of the Last Airbender script. So let's keep going. Great respect was afforded to all those who could bend their natural element. The Avatar was the only person born amongst all the nations who could master all 4 elements. Or you could just say the Avatar, master of all 4 elements, was the only person who could bend all the elements. You could just say this whole line completely differently. He was the only one who could communicate with the spirit world. That's one thing the Avatar can do, but it's not like it's his main. It's not like it's his main plot point. Yes, the Avatar can communicate with the spirit world, but it's not something so grandiose that you put that directly next to him being able to master all 4 elements. I feel like if you're able to master all 4 elements, anything else you can do is just an added caveat. It's not. It's. What is the word I'm looking for? The word I'm trying to look for the right word to describe this, but if my biggest trait is that, for example, I'm good at basketball, and then you also find out that I'm good at music, I feel like one or the other would garner more attention, or vice versa. I feel like one or the other would garner more attention, because as nice as it is to be able to do these skills, one or the other has to be the one that you're known for. I mean, sure, you can be known for both, but some tend to stand out a little bit more than others. So saying he was the only one who could communicate with the spirit world. With the spirit's guidance, the Avatar kept balance in the world. So here's the thing. It's not here's another thing that kind of strikes a chord with me with this intro, because you kind of need to be specific. It's not all the spirits themselves that give the Avatar guidance. It's the previous avatars, the spirit of the previous avatars that help the Avatar keep balance in the world. Because you don't see like some random spirit just floating around telling the Avatar how to behave. No, the Avatar, he or she, recount memories from previous avatars in order to further know how to be a better Avatar and keep balance in the world. It's not just spirits themselves, even though, Legend of Korra went waist deep, well, all the way to the neck up in diving into the spirit world and the history of the spirit world and everything. The Last Airbender pretty much just let the previous avatars be the one that guide Aang and pretty much told him the history of the world and everything and how to be a better Avatar. So it's not like the spirits themselves were the ones that actually guided the Avatar. So that sentence kind of feels a bit bloated. With the spirit's guidance, the Avatar kept balance in the world. And then 100 years ago, he just disappeared. So you're just gonna leave out the whole... Okay, so this whole intro script here from Katara. We're still in the opening narration, and I'm already finding so many things wrong with it. We're still in the opening narration where Katara is expositioning to everyone, and we don't even get any mention of how the Fire Nation decided to pretty much attack the world and try and take it over. The very plot detail that's given in the intro of the show. We don't even get any mention of the Fire Nation at all, and how that then everything changed when the Fire Nation attacked. We don't get any of that? We just get told that 100 years ago, all was right with our world. Prosperity and peace filled our days. The four nations lived amongst each other in harmony. You don't even say anything like that. Then everything changed when the Fire Nation attacked. But the Avatar, master of all four elements, only the Avatar, master of all four elements, could stop them. But when the world needed him most, he vanished. 100 years later, my brother and I discovered the new Avatar, an Airbender named Aang. And although his bending skills are great, he has a long way to go before he's ready to save anyone. But I believe Aang can save the world. You see how quickly I just went through that? All you had to do was just quote the show's intro. It doesn't even take you a long time to go through this. Just say your spill and move on. But the more I read this script that has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 sentences, I feel like I've spent far too much time on this intro sentences than it takes to say the entire intro from the original show. The entire intro itself is less than a minute. The intro by Katara, even less so. But just going from with the spirit's guidance, the avatar kept balance in the world. And then 100 years ago, he just disappeared. And then that's it? And then you just end it there? And then we have the whole script. A screen of text appears, reading Book 1, Water, with the water-bending symbol below. It fades to a scene of water swishing gently back and forth. The camera pans to reveal Katara practicing her forms on the edge of the ice. She eventually levitates a small sphere of water out of the ocean, and plays with it gently before accidentally tripping and sending it flying off screen. Sokka, not Sokka, Sokka leaps up from off screen, soaked from the impact, but you can't really tell because they don't know. Apparently, they were too scared to cover their actual actors in real water to make it appear like he was actually covered in it. Sorry, this is a dramatic reading of The Last Airbender. Katara. I'm sorry, hey, I'm sorry. Hey, it worked better that time. It doesn't even have the line where Sokka just says Katara, or did he not even say that? Sorry, it's been a millennium since I watched the movie. I try to distance myself from incredibly stupid and dumb movies, so if I don't remember every single detail about The Last Airbender, it's because I don't care about the movie and I find it dumb. I'm just doing a dramatic reading of the script. I thought about Mom. Isn't that strange? What does that got to do with the current situation right now? How do you piggyback off of that? How do you piggyback off of that after dousing your brother in water? How do you just piggyback from covering your brother in water, theoretically, because he's not actually covered in water. He's just sprinkled with water if you actually see the film. But how do you piggyback off of covering, with parentheses, your brother in water, and you just say, I thought about Mom. Isn't that strange? Why is it strange to think about your mom? What kind of a sentence is that? This is a real line spoken by a real person. Someone was paid to write this line. I thought about Mom. Isn't that strange? Now, the thing is, we know that Katara's mom has long since passed, but this whole sentence of, I thought about Mom, isn't that strange? Why? Why would it be strange? Why would it be strange to talk about your parent? Even if they've passed on, why would it be strange to talk about them? Why would it be strange to even think about them? The best way to honor their memory and to keep the thought of them alive is to remember family members who have passed on. I think about my great aunt all the time and how much of an influence she had on my family. So it's not weird and it's not strange to think about your own family members, especially those who are no longer, living. So this whole line just makes absolutely no sense to me. And it never plays into anything later. Like you bring up your mom Qatar brings up her mom and it's never addressed again. I don't know. It's been a minute since I last seen the movie. Maybe it'll come up again while we're reading through the rest of this script. But Qatar says, I thought about mom. Isn't that strange? This is an entirely dumb line. We're going to move on. And Sokka says, yeah, I guess so. Just stop doing that stuff around me. I always get wet. So my thing is, that Katara does, apparently she does this often enough where he says he always gets wet. Has he not adapted to the situation and said to himself, Katara is practicing her waterbending. So I'm going to stand far away from her to avoid getting wet. If you get wet every time she's bending in close proximity, why haven't you learned to go in a completely different location to avoid getting wet? Don't you think if you say you're always getting wet, you would have learned to avoid being near the person who is always getting you covered in water all the time? Wouldn't you? I would. If say for instance, one of my sisters, they were waterbenders, and I'm just around them and I'm always getting wet. It only takes me about once or twice to think, you know what? It only takes me one time because I don't like being drenched in water unexpectedly. I don't like any sort of wetness hitting me unexpectedly. Like say for example, they're washing their hands and some water jumps up on me. If I have no mindset to be wet, if I have no mindset to have water on my skin at that point, I'm going to get away from them because I am not under the impression of getting wet in any way. So it only takes just one droplet of water for me to distance myself from the source of that water so I don't get any more wet than I already have. So my question is, why hasn't Sokka adapted to the situation and learned to distance himself from Katara whenever they're out in the open if he knows she's going to be bending? I always get wet whenever just stop doing that stuff around me. I always get wet. Why haven't you learned to get away from Katara to avoid getting wet in general? Sorry, this whole line annoys me because it makes Sokka seem like an incredibly stupid person that doesn't know how to actually learn. But let's continue with the script. We haven't even scratched the surface of the depths of stupidity. We have not even begun to fight yet. But continuing on with this dramatic reading of the last Airbender script, Katara accompanies Sokka on a hunt for food for their tribe. We don't see any penguin seals or any sort of different creatures out there in the open. It's almost as if the world building was incomplete for this movie. Because in the intro, in the very first episode of the Avatar: The Last Airbender, the show, there were plenty of creatures out there that could work very well for food for them. There were plenty of creatures out there. Penguin, seals, and the like. You mean to tell me that there's no fish in the water at all? Ever? You ate up all the fish around the Southern Water Tribe? Is that what happened? You just ate up all the food at the bottom of the world? Nothing lives in the ocean out there? How have you managed to survive this long? But let's continue on. More narration, because the movie itself can't explain these things. You have to be told, because no one likes to be shown things. No one likes to piece things together or use deductive reasoning. We need to be explained things because exposition is for those who can't write. Now, continuing on, Narration. My brother and I live in the Southern Water Tribe, which was once a big city. Was it? Was the Southern Water Tribe a big city? I don't know about you, but when I look at the Southern Water Tribe, I just see a bunch of ice huts in one solitary location. I find it very hard to believe that it used to be a big city, especially the movie version. Our father is off fighting in the war. My mother was taken prisoner and killed when I was young. In this time of war, food is scarce. My brother and I often go hunting for food, but unfortunately, my brother isn't the best hunter in the world. Okay, so now that we've established that Sokka is out there hunting, and he isn't the best hunter in the world, my question is, why is he out there hunting? Katara hasn't told Sokka that he's not the best hunter in the world. Katara had no problem in the show itself letting Sokka know about himself. Calling him misogynist and sexist and all these different things that Sokka was at the beginning of the show. And she had no problem, putting Sokka in his place. But in this movie, Katara just really doesn't let Sokka have it when he deserves it. Sokka's just kind of mean-spirited. Even though he's the older brother, he's kind of mean-spirited, and no one ever offers him up any sort of resistance whenever he speaks. He just says what he wants, and no one ever objects to it. So that goes completely against Sokka's character, even in the beginning. Sokka follows the tiger seal tracks, leading them out to the vast open field of ice. And Sokka says, "Tiger seal." Katara says, "Are you sure?" "I did everything Dad said to do. I watch which side of the fin tracks are more indented. That shows which direction they're going. I saw how long the drag skids are. That shows you how fast they're going." And then okay, so okay, this whole line of how, I guess this line is meant to explain Sokka remembering the training that his dad gave him on how to track animals. I watch which side of the fin tracks are more indented. That shows which direction they're going. I saw how long the drag skids are. That shows you how fast they're going. But given that it just shows them in the vast, and it says here, leading them out to the vast open field of ice. Vast open field of ice. We've already established in the story that they're in a vast open field of ice, yet you won't see any animals out there. So even in the far off distance, if you're in a vast open field, you can see stuff out there in the distance. But unfortunately, the movie doesn't do enough with its world building, where they decide not to include any of the creatures out there, or even make it seem like, okay, so this is what a tiger seal looks like. We're just told that Sokka is going after a tiger seal, but we never see one. See, one of the key things you need to do with world building is show us things. Don't just tell us that things exist. You need to show us. Show, don't tell. That's how this works. But Katara comes up after this sentence saying, after Sokka says, that shows you how fast they're going. And Katara says, there's something under there. Sokka uses his boomerang to crack the floor open, but the cracks expand and start a cave-in. It's a cave-in. Move away from the cracks. No, duh. You would think with them living in the Southern Water Tribe, where their entire existence has been on crackling ice, on ice that moves and ice shelves and the like, you would think that you wouldn't need to explain to either one of them to move away from the cracks because of a cave-in. I know it's said for the audience, but due to self-preservation in people with common sense, you don't need to tell us to get away from the cracks. We see anything. We see ice cracking, especially if you're one of those people on YouTube who does videos such as stepping out on frozen water beds thinking that it's completely stable, and then it starts to crack, and you just start, and you immediately think, okay, it's not a good idea for me to be here. That self-preservation just comes into play here. So this whole line of, it's a cave-in, move away from the cracks. You would think that they would already know to stay away from the cracks itself. But more narration, a large ice sphere emerges from the cracks with a silhouette of a person inside it. Sokka then says, Katara, don't go near it. This is probably some Fire Nation trick. Just back away really slow. Okay, so. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the Fire Nation deals with things concerning fire. We have not seen anything from the Fire Nation in this film yet to make us think that they're capable of planting ice traps in the ice. From what we know of the Fire Nation is that they tend to associate themselves exclusively with things and colors that are associated with fire. It is literally in their name. So, this whole line of it could be a Fire Nation trick, you are looking at a giant sphere of ice come out of the ground. Ice and the Fire Nation do not coincide. Even those of us who have never, even though people, I'm not saying me, but even people who have never seen the show will associate the Fire Nation with things of fire. They won't think of the Fire Nation planted ice traps in the Southern Water Tribe. They're not going to think of that because the very idea that the Fire Nation would deal with anything not associated with fire is already outlandish. So Sokka, you would think, actually, you know what? You would think that Sokka would know that this isn't something that the Fire Nation would do. Especially with as much as he talks about the Fire Nation and how they know so much about the Fire Nation and the history of how the Fire Nation tried to take over the world, basically. They know about the Fire Nation. So why, out of all the possible things they could think of the Fire Nation, would Sokka, of all people, especially since he's older than Katara, would he think that a giant sphere of ice with a person inside of it is some kind of Fire Nation trick? So, just continuing, Sokka says, Katara, don't go near it. This is probably some Fire Nation trick. Just back away really slow. As Sokka turns around, Katara grabs his boomerang and, like a complete idiot without even thinking, she just immediately starts beating on the sphere, not wondering if it's possible that her hitting it could cause it to explode, or if something could happen to her where it could shoot out a shard of ice and then just impale Katara, killing her instantly, ending the movie right then and there. She just immediately begins hitting on it for no reason. We are not led to believe that Katara knows that there's a good reason to hit that sphere whatsoever. And Sokka says, Katara, do not hit that sphere. Okay, so we've already established that Katara really doesn't listen to Sokka whatsoever. Even because earlier in the script, he complains about her constantly bending and how he's always getting wet because of it. So clearly, Katara wants to bend regardless, so she doesn't really give Sokka that respect when it comes to following any sort of order or whatever. So why does he think that Katara is going to listen to him right now and do not hit that sphere? But then we have some more descriptions here. The ice sphere breaks apart, shooting a bright light high to the sky, which catches the attention of Prince Zuko on a faraway ship. I forgot to move my phone away from this. Oh, it's just letting me know. Wait, hold on. Let me pull that article up. Okay, there we go. All right, continuing on. The ice sphere breaks apart, shooting a bright light high to the sky. Why not just say high into the sky, not high to the sky? Which catches the attention of Prince Zuko on a faraway ship. And then we get the introduction of Zuko. Uncle, look! In the resulting ice crater, Katara and Sokka slide down to discover a 13-year-old boy, Aang, alive but exhausted with his large six-legged bison creature, Appa. Now, the thing is, we don't get told that this dude is even 13 years old, his name is Aang, or that creature is Appa. And Katara says, but we'll get into that. Katara says, is he breathing? And Sokka says, did you see that light shoot into the sky? And Katara says, what's your name? How did you get here? How did you get in the ice? The boy turns towards Katara, but is too tired to speak. I mean, his first words towards Katara in the actual show was, I'm Aang. Want to go penguin sledding with me? And he is up and about. He says he's groggy, waking up from the sphere he put himself in with Appa. You know, you find that out later. But he springs to life the moment he says his name. I'm Aang. You want to go penguin sledding with me? And then Aang is up. He doesn't fall back to sleep. He doesn't fall back unconscious. He's just up, and he's conscious, and he's up and about. But here, turns towards Katara and falls back asleep in true movie fashion. He's exhausted, to Sokka. We need to get him back to the village. And Sokka pokes around Appa, who is still sleeping. What is this thing? Appa's tail accidentally lands on top of Sokka. It's trying to eat me! So, Sokka can't really differentiate a mouth from a tail, so Sokka isn't exactly bright in this movie. So, continuing with the script, Aang is taken back to the village, where he soon recovers in an igloo. Appa follows them home off-screen, much to the amazement of the villagers. And Villager says, look, see? Katara enters the igloo where the boy is recovering. As he puts on his shirt, Katara sees the tattoos on his back. And Katara says, how'd you get all the way out here? And Aang, whose name is Ong in this movie, oh my goodness, I hate that so much. Ong says, I ran away from home. We got in a storm. We were forced under the water of the ocean. And Katara says, oh, I see. It wasn't very smart. I was just upset. Thanks for saving me. The way Aang speaks in this movie just sounds like he's saying words. It's not like he's holding a conversation. It's like he's just saying words, and then the next person says words. It doesn't seem natural. At least that's how it feels to me. And Katara says, lucky. And Aang says, I should probably get home. They'll all be worried. And Katara says, you're not still upset? And Aang says, not as much as I was. Okay, where is this conversation even going? Where's this conversation even going? You're not going to ask him who he is, what he is, where he comes from. You're just going to carry on this conversation of Aang once being upset, then getting frozen in ice, and then you're just asking if Aang is still upset for whatever reason. It's never been established for us to know exactly what the issue was that caused him to be stuck in the ice in the first place. So why is this conversation even continuing? I ran away from home, we got in a storm, we were forced under the water of the ocean. Just say we were forced into the ocean because of the storm. I ran away from home, We got in a storm and then we were forced into the ocean. You don't need to be so... Why did they... Oh my goodness. The reason why this script doesn't resonate with me is because they sound too grandiose when they're describing things. That's why this script is sort of throwing me off. I ran away from home. We got in a storm. We were forced under the water of the ocean. Just say we were forced into... And we got into a storm and we were forced into the ocean. Just say that. Don't... When he says, I ran away from home, that's a whole sentence. We got into a storm. That's a whole sentence. We were forced under the water of the ocean. That's a whole sentence. Why not just combine the last two sentences into one so it doesn't seem like you're just saying lines? I ran away from home. We got in a storm. We were forced under the water of the ocean. And Katara says, oh, I see. It wasn't very smart. I was just upset. Thanks for saving me. He's just saying words. Where is this conversation even going? Katara says, lucky. Aang says, I probably should get home. They'll all be worried. See, this is the point of the conversation where Katara should ask him, who would be worried? Are you an airbender? That's where this conversation should go. But no, Katara, the script has Katara say, you're not still upset, and Aang says, not as much as I was. You're not going to establish who Aang is. You're just going to ask him if he's still upset or mad and upset or whatever. That's how this conversation's going. That's what we're doing today. You're not going to ask him the important questions like who he is and where he comes from. I'm just looking at this script and the problem with this script and the reason why it's taken me so long to do my dramatic reading of it is just that it doesn't flow. It doesn't flow. It doesn't feel natural. When I'm saying these lines, they don't flow naturally into one another as like a actual conversation that two normal people would have. But Aang says, not as much as I was. Narration. Outside, Zuko's ship smashes through the icy landscape towards the village. Sokka later leads a train of children into the igloo. With Sokka saying, the Fire Nation is here. Katara says, what? And Sokka says, and they brought their machines. Okay, another thing. We know that there are some technological advancements in the world of Avatar. It's more steampunk than anything else. But we know what a Fire Nation ship is. It's not like a massive machine where you just say, and they brought their machines. Because they don't actually bring any sort of machines other than the ships themselves. They just don't. They don't bring anything else. They just bring their ships. So why not just say, and they brought their ships? Because if you say, and they brought their machines, I'm expecting some big mechanical thing to just come out of their ship and not the ship itself. If this is Sokka describing the ships themselves, then it seems it doesn't really flow with the whole world building, and it doesn't really flow with how with what we see, because we only see the ships themselves. We see the ship and we associate said ship with the word ship. We don't associate it with the word machines. So even if the ship is mechanical in nature, we still see it as a boat. We still see it as an actual ship. We don't call an ocean liner a machine. Katara and Sokka have been alive on that earth long enough to distinguish between what a machine is and what a ship is. So this whole instance of Sokka saying they brought their machines as if he's never seen a ship before. That doesn't seem to flow. But continuing on, Katara is heading out of the igloo with Sokka, then turns to Aang. And Sokka says, "Don't come out till I tell you it's safe." And Aang says, "Is something wrong?" Gee, Sokka coming into the igloo, saying the Fire Nation is here, acting all frantic, and trying to get Katara's attention, because this is a serious thing that's going on. Nah, nothing wrong. Nothing wrong here whatsoever. Real genius, this Aang dude. And Katara says, "No, please wait here." Oh, so we're lying now. You're just gonna lie to the man. You're just gonna lie to the man and say that nothing is wrong whatsoever. And you try to pacify him and tell him, "Please, just wait in here." Zuko enters the village with his men. Now, mind you, Zuko and the Firebenders were introduced riding on top of their giant, Komodo dragons. And that's how they're introduced. They're introduced with their big, giant, toothy, meat-eating Komodo dragon creatures. And that's how Zuko is introduced. Zuko Soldier number 1. Hurry now! Zuko Soldier number 2. Secure the area! Sokka says, "It can't be coincidence that we break him out of the ice, light shoots into the sky, and now the Fire Nation is here with their machines." Just say the Fire Nation is here with their ships. You can't be that illiterate to the knowledge of the world where you don't know what a ship is. So this whole sentence makes no sense. Sokka reaches for his boomerang behind him, about to use it against Zuko. And Katara says, "Sokka, don't." Zuko takes off his helmet before addressing the villagers. "I am Prince Zuko, son of Fire Lord Ozai and heir to the throne. Bring me all your elderly." So we're already getting exposition with Zuko introducing himself. And a child villager says, "Papa!" Zuko Soldier number 3, "Move!" And villager says, "Yeah?" What? A villager said, "Yeah"? I don't remember this in the movie. Just a random villager just says, "Yeah?" Katara says, "Grandma!" Villager, "Please don't harm him." Zuko Soldier, "Come on." The soldiers then take out several elderly villagers, including Kana, the grandmother of Sokka and Katara. Furious, Katara is about to use her waterbending. Sokka says, "Katara, don't." Zuko Soldier number 4, "Form a line." Zuko Soldier number 5, "Come on." They like to say "come on." How many times have they said this now? They said this twice already. They can't say something else? Zuko Soldier number 6, "Here." Villager, "Hey." Child villager, "Grammy." One of the soldiers finds Aang in the igloo with some children. Upon noticing his tattoos, he is brought to Zuko. Zuko is astonished to find the tattoos that he seemingly recognized its significance. And then Aang says, "You're scaring these people." And Zuko says, "Who are you? What's your name?" And Aang says, "I don't need to tell you anything." And Zuko says, "Firebenders!" Zuko's soldiers move into positions. "I'm taking you to my ship. If you don't come, I'll burn down this village." And Aang just says, "I'll go with you. Don't hurt anyone." Now, in the movie itself, there is barely any fire to speak of. There's just like a little bit of a fire pit in the middle of the village. And the film establishes that a firebender needs a source of flame in order to bend fire, which is quite possibly one of, if not the most insulting thing about this movie that any real fan or pretty much any person who has ever seen Avatar: The Last Airbender would bring up and complain about. The fact that a firebender needs a source of fire in order to bend fire is completely idiotic, and it introduces an unnecessary limitation that is specific to firebenders. Because everyone else can bend elements freely, why is it that the Fire Nation, a nation that has basically taken over the world, why are they the only nation that can't bend their own elements freely? They've taken over the entire world against 3 other different nations that can bend their own elements freely, yet the Fire Nation won? Because if you're going to try and take over the world, and you're a nation where people can bend fire, but they need a source of fire in order to do it, how have you managed to become such a powerful force? Because not every place has fire for you to bend. Just think about that for a second there. We'll get back to this script, but if you're a firebender and you're part of a nation that has basically tried to take over the entire world, how have you progressed as far as you have against 3 other nations that are not limited to using their own elements to combat you? Now, it can be said that, well, all these different nations have access to their elements freely, so that's the reason why they're able to bend. But, I mean, it'd be quite impossible to find a location that doesn't have Earth for Earthbenders, because it pretty much makes up the majority of the world. It'll be pretty darn difficult for waterbenders to not have access to water, because it pretty much makes up the entirety of the world. Firebenders have already been pre-established to create fire on their own, if we're going back to the tried and true series that actually respects its world building and plot and characters in said plot. It's already been pre-established that firebenders can bend their element without needing a source of fire around them. So this whole instance of Zuko saying, if you don't come, I'll burn down this village. First of all, you need a source of fire in order to do that. And a small little campfire is not enough to burn down an entire village. It's stupid, I know. But Aang says, I'll go with you. Don't hurt anyone. Aang follows Zuko and his men to the ship. The villagers move closer when a firebender sends out flames over their head, requiring flame from a nearby campfire in order to intimidate them. Sokka and the villagers duck. They helplessly watch Aang being taken away. Cut to the igloo. So, here's the thing. The series itself doesn't outright explain that firebenders need fire in order to actually manipulate fire quite yet. They explain it later. But one thing about the entire film as a whole is its overabundant need to do martial arts move before the bending actually occurs. I know I brought this up in the past, like in the far off past, the last time I talked about The Last Airbender. But in the show, everything flowed. The very motion of a person moving caused the bending to happen. I wouldn't even call them complicated martial arts moves. It was just stances that people would take. And it was different types of stances. Like the firebenders had an aggressive stance, and whenever they moved aggressively, that's when the firebending happened. When airbenders moved around and they flipped through the air and they lightly touched the ground, and their very inertia, their very momentum generated air, that flowed. Waterbenders had long flowing strokes when it came to their movement, when it came to their bending. The fact of the matter is, the bending itself happened when they moved. They didn't do a series of moves like they're doing a special move in Mortal Kombat, or they're doing a special series of moves in Tekken or Street Fighter, and then the special move happens. They weren't putting in button combinations. It's like the bending in the movie, it's like they're forcing their body to do a series of combinations before the bending happens. That is not how bending works. Bending happens when the body moved. And the different directions and the different ways you moved caused different types of bending to happen. Like I said, firebenders had an aggressive stance, which caused their fire to be aggressive when it projected itself out. Waterbenders had long flowing strokes, flowing like water. Airbenders had floaty type moves that had them moving incredibly acrobatically, allowing their own inertia and momentum to generate the air that they needed. Earthbenders had a hardy, tough stance. Them pounding into the ground caused the earth to shift under their weight. That's how bending works. But the bending in the movie itself, it was more like choreographed moves, and then the bending happened. When it should be, the bending should be happening the moment the body is moving. In order for it to feel like even your basic movements could cause bending to happen. And you had to flow your body as the bending happened to not only manipulate the bending element, but also to direct it and to shape it the way your body moved. So if you just did a series of moves and then bending, you just did a series of moves, then stopped, and then the bending happened, that doesn't correlate to how bending actually moves. But Sokka continues saying they were looking for someone old and they were looking for someone with the same markings the boy had. And Katara says, they dragged Mom away the same way when we were babies. She wouldn't have watched us being taken away. She would have fought. We found that boy. He's our responsibility. No, he isn't. Just because you find someone randomly in the eyes don't mean that they are your responsibility. That's not how this works. You don't claim ownership over people that you just randomly find out there in the open and then just claim them as your responsibility. That's not how this works. Why are you putting that on yourself? Why are you putting that responsibility on yourself? Making yourself responsible for the life of someone you don't even know. Oh, it's the hero's speech. Doesn't matter. Why are you putting yourself in that precarious situation? We found that boy. He's our responsibility. We should fight. What would you do if they tried to take me away? And Sokka says, I'd kill them all. But we've already established that Sokka is not the best of hunters, so I imagine he's not the best of fighters either. And Katara says, why? And Sokka says, because you're my sister. Because Dad told me to protect you with my life. And Katara says, because I'm your responsibility. And this boy is our responsibility. Completely different. The reason why Sokka chooses to protect Katara, the reason why Sokka protects Katara is because not only is she family, she's his sister, and because Dad said so. It is a familial obligation. It is a brotherly obligation. Like for me, for example, I am familially obligated. I am brotherly obligated to protect my sisters no matter what. Simply because they're my sisters and I love them. If anything, that should be one of his lines, because you're my sister and I love you, and because Dad told me to protect you with my life. Establish that familial bond in this line. I feel like it's going to be a hot minute before we're done with this script. Oh my goodness, we haven't even gotten out of the intro where Aang is taken away by Zuko. But Katara says, because I'm your responsibility, and this boy is our responsibility. And Sokka says, what do you want us to do, Katara? How are we supposed to save him? They're on a ship. Oh, so you know what a ship is! We've established that Sokka has established that he knows what a ship is after calling them machines twice beforehand. So he knows what a boat is. If you know, oh my goodness, the script. Oh my goodness, these lines. If Sokka knows what a ship actually is, what was the purpose of calling them machines beforehand? If you know what it is, why would you call it a machine? I literally just brought this up earlier. I'm trying to keep a cool, level head here while I'm reading this script. It's contradicting itself. What do you want us to do, Qatar? How are we supposed to save him? They're on a ship. We need a miracle to catch them. I know you think everything's going to work out, but I don't. Oh, such an optimistic person Sokka is. Appa wails louder and louder. When Sokka and Katara hear the sound of laughing children, they immediately go outside to see what is going on. The bison creature floats in the air as if wanting to follow his master, but is held back out of concern of the children hanging dangerously off his feet. So, in the show, Appa refuses to fly until Aang is on his back when they escape from Zuko and Iroh, and Aang says yip yip, and near the end of the first episode, we see Appa actually fly. Up until this point, Appa refused to fly and just swam in the ocean after Zuko's ship in order to get Aang back. It wasn't until near the end when Appa starts to fly and we actually see a flying bison. But here, Appa's just floating in the air to circumnavigate that entire little mini issue with Appa, just so it can skip ahead and have a reason for Appa to fly away in the future. And Katara says, his bison creature thing floats. Zuko's ship moves across the icy waters. Aang is kept in a room. The door opens and Iroh and Zuko walk in. Iroh is amazed to see a young surviving airbender. Aang says, what do you want with me? Iroh says, my nephew wants me to perform a little test on you. And Aang says, what kind of test? And Iroh says, I assure you it won't hurt. I've performed it hundreds of times. It only takes a few moments. And then you're free to go. Would you mind if I put a few things in front of you at the table? It will only take a moment. And Aang says, that's all you want. And Iroh says, my name is Iro, and you have my word. What has your name got to do with your word? You could have just introduced yourself at the beginning saying, my name is Iro, and this is my nephew Zuko. We would like to place a couple of things in front of you, just to test something, if you don't mind. Why not introduce yourself first? I know it seems like I'm griping on this far longer than I need to, but this line here where he introduces himself after all is said and done just to reassure Aang, you could have done that. He could have done that earlier by saying, my name is Iro. My nephew wants me to perform a little test on you, especially if Iroh comes in by himself. You could have just introduced yourself first. That would have flowed better. Cut to Sokka and Katara in the igloo with Katara's grandmother, Kana. Grandma, I know you're going to stop us, but this is just something I need. And then Kana, their grandmother, says, sit down. I knew from the first time we discovered you were a bender that one day I would realize your destiny. What destiny? What destiny? Johnny! Hosier! Welcome! I am reading through the script of The Last Airbender. The stream has been going on for about an hour and 14 minutes. And I am still in the part of the movie where Aang has been taken by Zuko and Iroh. And Iroh wants to test him, and then Kana's grandma is explaining to Katara about, I knew ever since you were a bender that this was going to be your destiny. And I'm wondering, what destiny? Why are you spouting out Nonsense with this destiny.
There hasn't been a waterbender in the Southern Water Tribe since my friend Hama was taken away.
Now, of course, they're just dropping names of characters we know from the original series, and Hama was a waterbender, but she was also known to be a bloodbender, which kind of goes against the whole waterbending thing. Like, if I pull up Hama, it describes Hama as a powerful waterbender. She was a waterbending master from the Southern Water Tribe. She was the very last to be captured and imprisoned by the Fire Nation during the Southern Water Tribe raids, but she escaped through the use of bloodbending, a waterbending technique she developed while incarcerated. So Hama created bloodbending. That basically allows you to manipulate the blood and fluids within a person's body. Which goes against, like, here's the thing, Hama explaining bloodbending to Katara. Controlling the water in another body and forcing your own will over theirs. Once you perfect this technique, you can control anything or anyone. It is literally a dark ability to use for waterbenders. And since Hama created it, that whole concept is pretty much ostracized because of that. But continuing on, Grandma says,
there hasn't been a waterbender in the Southern Water Tribe since my friend Hama was taken away. Today I found out that destiny. Did you see that boy's tattoos?
Sokka and Katara nod.
Kana continues saying, tattoos like that haven't been seen in over a century. I believe they are airbending tattoos.
And Katara says, how can that be? And Kana says,
I believe that little boy might be the Avatar.
And she pulls out a map of the world.
Once, a long time ago, the spirit world kept balance over us.
So that is not how things worked in the original series. The whole concept of the spirit world lording over the mortal world, not really a concept in the show. But whatever makes their boat float, and whatever they want to make up, it doesn't make sense.
What is the spirit world, Grandma?
And Kana says,
it's not a place made up of things you can touch.
No. I always thought the spirit world was something tangible. Not dealing with things of, I don't know, the spirit. This script. We know that if you say something is from the spirit world, it is not something from the physical world. Otherwise, you wouldn't call it the spirit world. You would call it the physical world. Even children are capable of realizing this thing. They love to exposite, but they do it in a way that makes it seem like you don't know what even the most basic of concepts are. Like, it makes it feel like we don't know what the word spirit is, and we have to be explained the concept of what the spirit is, or what the spirit world actually is. We're not stupid. But continuing, Kana says,
it's not a place made up of things you can touch, but it exists nonetheless. It is filled with the most amazing forms of dazzling creatures that exist in the most exotic valleys, mountains, and forests. Each of these creatures is a spirit.
No duh! If you're describing a spirit world, I'd imagine the creatures would be spirit creatures as well.
They've watched over us since the beginning. They have guided us, and only the Avatar can go speak to them.
Well, Legend of Korra has some issues with that, because it's not just the Avatar who can do it, but people who are attuned to the spirit world can talk to spirits as well. But thankfully, we don't really need to associate this movie with the original series because it does such a disservice to it. So we might as well treat this as a separate entity altogether.
Katara says, aren't there spirits here?
And Kana says,
yes, Yes, I'm sorry, I kind of forced that one out. Yes, there are some spirits that live hidden among us. Sure, they're watching us with great sadness. The Fire Nation doesn't wish to live by the spirits. That's why they're so frightened by the existence of the Avatar.
I thought it was the fact that the Avatar could bend all 4 elements. And that he's one of the most powerful people that could pose a threat to their world conquest. I thought that was the whole deal of the Avatar and why the Fire Nation feared them. Because the Avatar was the only one who could stand in the way of the Fire Nation taking over the world.
Not because the Avatar was so in tune with the spirit world. That's why they're so frightened by the existence of the Avatar.
Katara says.
What can he do?
And Kana says,
with his mastery of the 4 elements, he will begin to change hearts. And it is in the heart that all wars are won.
No, it isn't. Oh, this line is so stupid. This line is so stupid.
With his mastery of the 4 elements, he will begin to change hearts.
That's not what happens when the Avatar bends all 4 elements. Sure, people take the Avatar incredibly seriously when he's bending all of these elements together, but it doesn't just change people's hearts like the Phantom Thieves do.
And it is in the heart that all wars are won.
That's not true either. With his mastery of the 4 elements, he will begin to change hearts. They don't address the fact that with his mastery of the 4 elements, he's the most powerful being in all of the world. And he's a deterrent to those who try to enforce their will on others. Kana doesn't address that fact. She only addresses the philosophical angle of the Avatar being able to master all 4 of the elements. That's the only angle that Katara's grandma can come up with right now in this movie. So it makes it seem like the Avatar's ability to bend all 4 elements is not even akin to a nuclear deterrent, but a diplomatic thing that happens. I'm going to bend all 4 elements and then we shall know peace. That is not how this works. But continuing forward.
And it is in the heart that all wars are won. Now go, help this boy. He will need you to, and we all need him.
And then we just cut back to Zuko and the rest of them. Zuko's uncle Iroh conducts a few tests on Aang after assuring him the test would be painless, and once complete, he would be free to go. The test involves a candle flame that seems to be drawn towards to him, a poured water that forms a circle on the table, and a smooth rock that stands on an unstable position. So in the show, the Avatar is known by the toys that they choose that previous Avatar have all chosen. They weren't placed in front of different elements to see if the elements will react around them. The person was found out to be the Avatar if they chose the exact same toys that each reincarnation of the original Avatar chose. That's how you find out who the Avatar is. That and them being able to bend multiple elements together. But this whole put all these elements in front of them and see if the elements themselves move seems like a bit of an arbitrary way to find out who's the Avatar and who is not. But continuing forward, Zuko says, "You are my prisoner, Airbender. I'm taking you back to the Fire Nation." And then Aang says, "You said," and then Irla says, "I apologize. I should have explained further. If you failed the test as all others did, you were free to leave. But as it turns out,
You're the only one in the entire world who could pass this test. It is truly an honor to be in your presence.
So the thing about Iroh in the show was he had a roundabout way of saying things, but he wasn't just a big old liar. And he didn't leave out certain details to be seen as underhanded. You could have explained further to avoid all this confusion, but you chose not to. Okay.
Zuko says, "Don't even try to escape. This is a warship."
I'm looking around right now and I'm wondering, what has that got to do with anything? What does Aang being on a warship have to do with Aang not thinking about escaping? Do you have things on your ship that can keep people from escaping? You do realize that swimming is, in fact, an option that some people will try to use to escape from a ship, right? And if you know he's an airbender, then he could possibly use his airbending to escape. Your ship is not built to hold airbenders. We know this because with Kana, with Gram talking about how an airbender hasn't been seen in a whole century, I don't think they created ships with airbenders in mind. "Don't even try to escape. This is a warship," says Zuko. Aang leaps over the table, immediately ignoring Zuko, over Zuko and Iroh, then lands behind them. He propels himself backwards with airbending through an open door. No, you forgot to add, he does a series of overly complicated martial arts moves back and then airbends out of the door. Because if you watch that scene where Aang escapes in the movie, he does these overly complicated hand gestures, and then the airbending happens. It doesn't flow with his body when he moves, which just makes it all the more disappointing. I'm sorry if you're just listening to this audiobook experience of me just talking about the Airbender movie, and it's just sounds like nothing but utter disappointment. But there is nothing but utter disappointment. Hold on a quick second. I'm just looking up something. Sorry, I'm just reading through something real quick. That makes no sense whatsoever. Okay, going back to it. Zuko says, "Stop! There's no way you can!" And Aang uses airbending to close the door, trapping Zuko and Iroh inside as it can only be opened from the outside. The three guards outside... See, first mistake is you didn't just put him in a room with a locked door. So why would you put yourself in a position where if you were to escape, you would be locked in this room with no way out? Y'all don't believe in... I'm just going to be so incredibly disappointed in this whole movie. Y'all don't believe in contingency plans? What if he escapes? What if he escapes? Then we'll be trapped in this room. That's something that Iroh would bring up. Because he's sarcastic like that. Well, I don't think it was a good idea for us to put the Avatar in this room with only one way out, because now he's out and we have no way to get out ourselves. And Zuko would get annoyed by his uncle bringing up such a good point. But Oh boy. This movie just disappoints me. Pardon me. Pardon me again. So, continuing forward, we have Zuko saying, Aang uses airbending to close the door, trapping Zuko and Iroh inside, as it can only be opened from the outside. The 3 guards outside see Aang and then approach slowly to capture him. Aang pins them against the wall. Is this supposed to be wall? Aang pins them against the wall with airbending, then goes to the upper deck, grabbing his staff along the way. Out in the open ocean, he looks around, then sees Appa landing at a distant icy cliff. Zuko manages to get out of the holding room and comes to the upper deck with his men. Aang spins around and turns his staff into a glider. Zuko then says, "Don't move, you have nowhere to run!" Aang then races across the deck to the bow of the ship, chased by Zuko and his man. Zuko Soldier number 7, halt! Zuko Soldier number 8, don't let him escape! Zuko Soldier number 9, get him! Aang jumps off the bow. Instead of a splash in the ocean, he appears gliding up to the cliff as Zuko and his men watch in amazement. Now, due to the movie's imposed limitations on firebenders, they don't just aim at Aang and start shooting fireballs in that direction. Causing Aang's escape to be even more intense. They just watch him, eliminating any real threat from the Fire Nation the moment someone is far away from them. See, the Fire Nation isn't threatening in this movie. They're only threatening if they're near actual fire. And even if they're near actual fire, none of them will think wise enough or think far ahead enough to imagine, this person is flying away in the air. Now, of course, they don't have supreme mobility in the air, so maybe if we use this fire that's in front of us to kind of shoot a couple fireballs in their direction, it could have the chance of actually hitting the person who's escaping. But no, they just decide we're just gonna let him go. We can bend fire if we have it around us, but we're not gonna attempt to do that now. It just seemed kind of odd to me. Hold on, I'm just listening to the playback because I dropped some frames here. I'm just listening to the playback here. It's weird. I was just double checking. Everything's good now. We're good now. Yeah. Yep. We're good now. Okay. So here, the thing is, in the not the show, but the movie, it's shown that Zuko Zuko is shown bending fire on the deck of the ship in the movie, showing that there is actually fire he can bend. So the whole thing of Aang being able to escape from them with absolutely no retaliation, not even a fireball just thrown in his direction, it is a massive oversight on the firebender's part. I'm going to keep going until we reach the next act, and we're actually coming up on it right now. Aang jumps off the bow. Instead of a splash in the ocean, he appears gliding up to the cliff as Zuko and his men watch in amazement. Aang reunites with his bison creature with Katara and Sokka with absolutely no retaliation whatsoever. Aang says, "Thanks for bringing Appa to me. The Fire Nation is up to something. I have to go back now." How do you know the Fire Nation is up to something? How do you know? No, seriously, how do you know the Fire Nation is up to something? How do you go off of Iroh saying, "I'm going to put these things in front of you," and then Zuko saying, "I'm going to take you back to the Fire Nation"? How do you know the Fire Nation is up to something? At the very least, you can surmise that they want you for some reason, but you don't have any big idea of what overarching plot is happening with the Fire Nation. So why do you go off of that assumption here? I'm sorry, it sounds like I'm nitpicking, but this sentence here, "Thanks for bringing Appa to me. The Fire Nation is up to something. I have to go back now." I feel like saying the Fire Nation is up to something should be the last line you say. "Thanks for bringing Appa to me. I have to go back now. The Fire Nation is up to something." No, actually, why not just say, "Thanks for bringing Appa to me. I have to go back now." And then either Katara or Sokka will say, "Why do you have to go back?" And then say, "The Fire Nation is up to something." Establish that the Fire Nation is a threat in a more convincing manner. But Sokka says, "We'll come with you." And Aang says, "I can take you back to the village." And Katara says, "We're going with you." Appa flies off the cliff out of range as Zuko watches in despair. If only he had some fire on the deck of his ship that he could fire in their direction in order to make their escape not only difficult, but also possibly impair their method of being able to fly away from them. But I guess smarts isn't really something you find in the people of the Fire Nation, at least in this movie. Iroh says, "You found the Avatar." And Zuko says, "For a moment, I had my honor back." And Iroh says, "Your destinies are tied, Zuko. That you can be sure of." See, they missed an opportunity to have a joint fire-bending moment between Iroh and Zuko to further establish their relationship as nephew and uncle. Like the moment where Zuko and Iroh combined their bending together to create a ginormous fireball in the show and fire it in the direction of Aang and the rest of them while they're flying away. Aang uses his bending to propel the fireball into a nearby ice shelf, and that ice shelf comes down on Zuko's ship, causing it to be stuck there as they try to dig it out. That would have been a good moment to have in a movie, if the movie was actually well thought out. But unfortunately, it was not. And we just got a moment where the heroes escape with absolutely no repercussions. Good Lord, this entire movie is beyond stupid. I am sorry, it's just done. Act 2, The Avatar Returns. Let's see how long this one is. And then there's Act 2, The Blue Spirit. Act 2B, The Blue Spirit. Then Act 3, The Siege of the North. And then the epilogue. Okay. So the Act 2, the Avatar returns. Let's read through this one. Let's read through this one and then I'll bring it to a close. We'll read through Act 2A, the Avatar returns. Then Act 2B, the Blue Spirit, and Act 3, the Siege of the North. I'll continue in a different stream as I read through this entire script. Because this script is something else. I find so many problems with it. All right. Act 2A, the Avatar returns. Katara, with more exposition and unnecessary narrating, says, Aang flew us to his home. He told us how he left there in a storm on Appa and got forced into the ocean where they almost drowned. No. Aang airbent a sphere around them and ice formed, and he couldn't remember anything after that. Okay, so first of all, it doesn't even establish the fact that Aang is 112 years old. He literally comes from 100 years in the past. They don't establish that whatsoever. Even Aang knows that I'm 112 years old. No, actually, yeah. Actually, they established this. They establish Aang's age very early on. I think before even Aang is taken away by Zuko in the show. And there's no mention of Aang's advanced age whatsoever. And whether he comes from a different time or whatever. They don't mention any of that. Aang, Sokka, and Katara arrive at the Southern Air Temple on the high mountains. Aang. Hey, Chinto. Monet, I'm back. Hey, guys, I want you to meet someone. Now, when they fly into the Southern Air Temple, no one really notices. No one really notices that the entire air temple is decrepit. There are no creatures flying around, and there certainly aren't any people. No one uses their peripheral vision or deductive reasoning to figure out that something isn't quite right until later into the scene when it's far too late. Katara says, "This is where you live?" And Aang says, "They must be playing some trick or something. Monkey Yatso is gonna try and jump out and scare me at any moment. He's the teacher responsible for me. He's kind of like my father." And Katara says, "Is it okay if you tell me your name?" First of all, why are you just now asking this dude's name? In the show, the dude established his name the moment he woke up out of the ice. I've been reading this script for about an hour and 45 minutes. Why did it take this long for the movie to get to the point where we find out the name of one of the main characters? Hold on, I'm being cold. Shonen Sensei, my apologies. I was talking to family and we were just talking about what we could possibly have for lunch. Apologies if there was just nothing but silence. That's on me. I am currently on today's Voices stream. I might as well rename this because I did a couple of voices at the beginning, but I've really been reading through this script of The Last Airbender, the M. Night Shyamalan movie, and it is just so much reading The Last Airbender script part 1. Because there's 2 more sections after I get done with this current section right now. Okay, let me just establish that in the chat. But I've been reading through this script of The Last Airbender, and it's just an amalgamation of lines that are spoken, but not in a way that makes it seem overly coherent. It just feels like words are being spoken rather than it being a script that feels natural. But continuing forward, the last thing I read off is Katara saying, "Is it okay if you tell me your name?" Now, my thing is, the problem I had with it earlier before I was speaking to family about lunch is it took this movie over 30 minutes. I would dare say it took even over maybe about 40, maybe 45 minutes to establish the main name of one of the main characters. Like, you never thought to ask him his name on your way to the Southern Air Temple? You never thought to ask his name when you got him out of the ice? Never dawned on you to do any of that whatsoever. I just feel like there's something here. I just feel like if you meet a person, especially if it's a person who is friendly towards you and is kind and polite towards you from the beginning, there shouldn't be an issue here about them explaining who they are. You should actually kind of ask them that when you first meet, so you're not just calling the person, "Hey you," or "Hey guy," or "Hey dude." Ask the person their name so you can establish some sort of cordial relationship just to start things off. But it took them this long for the second act to start in this movie for Katara to try and find out Aang's name. "Is it okay if you tell me your name?" And Aang says, "The monks named me Aang." Well, we all know in the film that they call him Ong. I'm just gonna ignore that. I'm gonna ignore the incorrect pronunciation of these character names. "The monks named me Aang," leads them into the temple area. "Okay, guys, enough." A flying lemur flies towards Aang, and Sokka says, "Spider rat! They're poisonous! Get behind me!" First of all, this creature is described as flying towards Aang. Spiders and rats cannot fly. Nor does it have the appearance of a spider rat. It doesn't have multiple legs. It clearly doesn't look like an actual rat. How do you even know what a spider rat lives? What a spider rat looks like? How do you even know this, Sokka? How do you even know what a spider rat looks like? For you to make that insinuation. Are spider rats a prevalent thing in the southern in the southern water tribe? I doubt it. So how do you even know what a spider rat is? But Sokka says, Spider rat! They're poisonous! Get behind me! And Aang says, he's a flying lemur bat. We keep them as pets. Okay, so here's the thing. Momo, which is what this creature is, that's supposed to be Momo, is just a flying lemur. Not a flying lemur bat. Now, if I'm... Let me actually look this up. Let me look up Momo. Is he described as a flying lemur bat? No. He's not described as a flying lemur. He's described as a winged lemur. A winged lemur species. At no point is Momo described as a lemur bat in the show. It makes absolutely no sense, I know. But he's not a lemur bat. Just a winged lemur. I hate this movie so much. Okay, continuing onwards. Katara says, weren't they extinct a long time ago? And Aang says, extinct? No, there must be thousands of them on this mountain. And Katara says, your friends were monks? And Aang says, I know where they are right now. They're at the prayer field. Aang races across the playing field, goes down a flight of steps. Katara says, Aang, wait, I have to talk to you. Aang is shocked to see human remains and an unkept field. We got to describe that the area is completely unkept. It's not like it's been like 100 years or anything. But we have to describe, it has to describe not just the human remains, but the fact that no one's cut the grass in over 100 years. We got to describe this here in this script. Aang is shocked to see human remains and an unkept field. Katara. Aang, I think you were in that ice for almost 100 years. The firebenders started a war. I feel like that sentence should flow better or should be worded completely differently. I think you were in that ice for almost 100 years. The firebenders started a war. Those are completely two different whole conversations you can have separately just by those two sentences alone. You can't just start one that says, I think you were in that ice for almost 100 years. A whole conversation can just start from you just saying that this person was in that ice for almost 100 years. You could just start a whole line of dialogue from just that one sentence. You can also start a whole line of dialogue from the next sentence, the firebenders started a war. I just feel like these sentences that should start two entirely different lines of text, two entirely different lines of dialogue, should be worded differently, or this whole sentence should just be getting rid of, or I think you were in that ice for almost 100 years, and then just explain why the firebender started a war. But continuing on, Aang, feeling distraught, says, I left a few days ago. And Katara says, Aang, the Fire Nation knew the Avatar would be born into the air nomads, so they exterminated all the air nomads. So why... One thing that annoyed me about this sentence every time I hear it in people's reviews and in different clips for this movie is it annoys me so much to hear her saying air nomads twice in this string of dialogue. They knew the Avatar would be born into the air nomads. Why not just call them airbenders? Just call them airbenders. Why are you constantly calling them air nomads? Just call them airbenders. Oh my goodness, this movie is focusing too much on keeping the airbenders separate from every single other nation. Like you have firebenders, you have waterbenders, you have earthbenders, but air nomads. There's always some random call from Jamaica coming in. I don't know who you are. Get off of my phone. But Katara is saying,
Aang, the Fire Nation knew the Avatar would be born into the air nomads, so they exterminated all the air nomads.
I find problem with this sentence because you shouldn't be mentioning air nomads twice. You could say like, Aang, the Fire Nation knew the Avatar would be born into the air nomads. First of all, establish how you know that the Fire Nation is capable of finding out which reincarnation of the Avatar is able to be born into the air nomads. Establish how you know, how they know. Establish how they know this. And then just say,
Aang, the Fire Nation knew the Avatar would be born into the Airbenders, so they exterminated them all.
Just say that. You don't need to say the Avatar would be born into the air nomads, so they exterminated all the air nomads. Just saying that twice in such close proximity to one another just makes it seem like you're repeating it for absolutely no reason. Aang, words echoing throughout the entire area. You're lying! Finds a necklace on one of the remains. This is Monk Gyatso's. I made it for him. Aang has flashbacks to when he first gave the necklace to Gyatso. And then Aang just screams out, no! And he goes into the Avatar state. In his rage, his eyes and tattoos glow pure white, and strong wind begins to circle around him, lifting him up. Sokka! Sokka says, Katara, stay away from him! Aang is in a trance and enters the spirit world. Sokka says in an echo, Katara, stay away from him! And Katara has an echo, says, your friends were monks? Aang walks into a cave. While looking around inside, a head of a dragon pops out from the mist. And the dragon spirit says, the Avatar, where have you been? And Katara, in an echo, says, Aang, you can't bring Monk Gyatso back, but Sokka and I can be with you as long as you need. Don't give up. We can do this together, Aang. Aang leaves his trance and exits the spirit world. Aang opened his eyes. Katara is behind him. And then we just cut to Admiral Zhao. With Zhao spots Zuko on his ship out in the sea. And then we get exposition with Zhao saying, the banished prince. Let's offer him lunch. Cutscene to the mess hall on the Zhao's ship. This is what the script says. Cutscene to the mess hall on the Zhao's ship. Zuko and Iroh sit with Zhao on the main table in front of Zhao's men in the hall. And Zhao continues saying, I wanted to thank the great General Iroh and young Prince Zuko for dining with us. As you know, this is where the whole word phrase of as you know comes from and why people hate it so much. As you know, the Fire Lord has banished his son. We didn't know this. And if you say as you know, then it means that the characters that you're saying this to already know this, which makes you saying as you know pretty redundant and quite possibly condescending to people, because you're saying like, as you know, because you were there the moment your face was burned. That is what that sentence does. It makes it seem like you need to be reminded of an event that you were present at for the sake of the audience. But you can leave out the entire phrase of as you know, because we as the audience are not coming into this movie blind. We know what happened to Zuko because of the show. Even people who have no knowledge of Avatar can just have the movie explain this to you by way of the scene, not a person just saying, as you know, to a group of people who already know what's about to be said, because then it just makes it seem like the characters need to be reminded of events that they were already present at. It paints a picture that this character is explaining to these other characters who know about what he's talking about, and he has to explain it to them, even though they already know of the events and they were there present. As you know, the Fire Lord has banished his son, the prince, and renounced his love for him, and will not let him return to the throne unless he finds the Avatar. The Fire Lord believes his son is too soft, and by doing this, he will become strong and become a worthy heir to the throne. Zuko subconsciously bends a flame from a candle on the table. Iroh notices this and then holds his hand to calm him down. So, not only is Zhao a complete tool, but he's explaining something that Zuko knows and that Iroh already knows to them for no reason except to tell the audience. This entire movie is just knee-deep in needless and pointless exposition. But even more grandiose whenever Zhao is in the scene. And Zhao says, I commend the Fire Lord's disciple. For example, it seems I need to remind Prince Zuko that during his banishment he is an enemy of the Fire Nation and is not allowed to wear the Fire Nation uniform. But we will let him wear it today, like a child wearing a costume. Now, if you need to remind Zuko that during his banishment he is an enemy of the Fire Nation, why do you have him on your ship? Instead of, I don't know. If he's an enemy of the Fire Nation, then imprison him and take him back to the Fire Lord to receive punishment. But it's establishing Zhao as a complete douchebag, and is just doing it for kicks and giggles. And Zuko stands up and whispers to Zhao, one day, my father will take me back and you will bow before me. Zuko storms off the mess hall. Why not say storms out of the mess hall? This script. Iroh stands up and follows him. Back on his ship, Zuko gazes at his family picture, his mother, his father, his sister, and himself, before he begins his training of firebending and hand-to-hand combat with 4 firebenders. Iroh observes from the deck above while drinking his tea. So, this is the scene I was talking about, how it establishes that Zuko had fire on his ship. He is capable of having fire on his ship, but for whatever reason, when Aang escaped the first time, there was no fire present that they could have used to keep Aang from escaping. Appa lands in a forest in the southern Earth Kingdom where Katara, Sokka, and Aang set up camp. Momo, the winged lemur, has come. For whatever reason. Aang sits alone making sense of what he saw at the temple and the spirit world. How much longer do we have? We're almost there. We're almost there. Katara says, "You okay?" Aang says, "I'll be fine. I just saw every single person that I grew up with dead in their remains, and the person that I saw as a father he's just skull and bones and nothing else, and everything I ever known and loved growing up is completely gone, but I'm fine." Katara says, "You know, my grandma thinks because you're an airbender that you could be the Avatar." And then Aang just completely dismisses this conversation, saying, "How much does the Fire Nation control?" And Katara says, a lot of villages in the Earth Kingdom are like around here. They haven't been able to conquer big cities like Ba Sing Se, but they're making plans, I'm sure. They're just dropping Ba Sing Se just because people have such fond memories of Ba Sing Se. But was there really a reason to bring up Ba Sing Se if you're not going to expunge to talk more about Ba Sing Se even more? Was there really a reason for that? It just feels unnecessary. But that's just me. And then Sokka says, "So, are you the Avatar, Aang?" A young boy bursts out of the woods and seeks refuge with a trio from the Fire Nation soldiers chasing him. Sokka says, "What is this?" Katara says, "Stay hidden. Lead Fire Nation soldier. That child is being arrested." Katara says, "For what?" And leader
Lead Fire Nation soldier says he was bending tiny stones at us from behind a tree. It really hurt. This line, every time I see it, every time I hear it, it just undermines the overarching antagonistic nature of the Fire Nation. Sure, there are funny moments in Avatar, but when the Fire Nation is involved, it is always, for better or worse, a serious moment that you just can't dismiss. So whenever a Fire Nation soldier or a group of firebenders are in one location, it is not a good situation. Especially if it's already been pre-established from the story that the Fire Nation controls the wherever those Fire Nation or firebenders are currently occupying. So for this lead Fire Nation soldier to say he was bending tiny stones at us from behind a tree, it really hurt. See, an average real Fire Nation soldier would have literally burned this dude down because they would have actually been real firebenders. Because the firebenders in this movie require a heat source of some kind in order to bend, which means that unless they're near fire, they're pretty much stuck just chasing people. Like Scooby-Doo villains in those multi-doored hallways you always see in the Hanna-Barbera cartoons. That is what these Fire Nations and firebenders are pretty much stuck doing. Without the ability to freely bend fire, like we all know they can, they're just stuck chasing people, turning them into kind of the comic relief antagonists of the movie. But this line, he was bending tiny stones at us from behind a tree, it really hurt. First of all, you as a lead Fire Nation soldier, why are you so enamored with trying to arrest this kid that's bending tiny stones? Now, if he was bending full-on rocks and taking out your guys, like physically impairing your men, I'd understand the whole big need to arrest him, because that's assault. I'm not trying to come to the aid of the Fire Nation here, but it would make more sense for you to arrest this guy for bending stones at you if the stones actually did some real damage to you. Because with all of you just running up on this one guy saying he was bending tiny stones at us from behind a tree, it really hurt. The guy rubs the back of his head that he has his helmet on. He's wearing a helmet. Fire Nation armor is not just there for show. If he was bending tiny stones at you from behind a tree, I would imagine the armor that the Fire Nation member wears can stand to a couple of tiny stones. Now, if he was bending stones at, I don't know, like 100 miles an hour, and he was just nailing people in the shoulder like it was an airsoft round, or maybe at bullet speeds, I kind of understand. Because speed is weight. If Kizaru is any example, speed is weight. And if anything that can pick up speed goes from being a regular projectile into a dangerous projectile. So if he was bending stones at these Fire Nation soldiers at high speeds, I'd understand the need to arrest him because that can cause some serious damage. And Katara says, he can bend earth? And lead Fire Nation soldier says, earthbending is forbidden in this village. And Katara says, leave him alone, you're not taking him anywhere. And Sokka, in one of the oddest lines, and one of the most, in the oddest... Sorry, I thought I heard something.
I thought I heard something, but it's just my family practicing their skating downstairs. But in the most weirdly spoken line, Sokka says, "No one is taking anybody away." The way I said it, he says it just like that, and it's odd. And Kenzo is just screaming in the other room because he doesn't like to be left alone. But this line is odd. No one is taking anybody away. Katara pops open her water pouch and bends the water at the soldiers. Lead Fire Nation soldier, she's a bender! The water traps Sokka's arms and chest in ice instead, much to his frustration. Katara! The soldiers arrest Sokka, Katara, Aang, and the young earthbending boy. As they are taken to the prison camp just outside of a village, Aang notices the poor condition of the village and its people. They are shoved through a gateway of a tall metal fence. Fire Nation prison guard. Move, you two. In the prison yard, there are men on the ground, weary and defeated. The earthbending boy reunites with his father. Dad! Earthbending boy. Earthbending boy again. This is my father. Earthbending father. Hello. Sokka. That's the Fire Nation's plan. Suppress all other bending. How would you even do that? How would you suppress the bending of other nations without first isolating them? How do you suppress earthbenders from earthbending, but allow them to live in a location where they can freely bend the earth? How do you plan to suppress them? See, the way this worked in the show is that they took all of the earthbenders and put them on a ship and kept them out on the ocean, with the only earth they could bend to be coal in service of the ship remaining afloat. They kept earthbenders from their source. That's how they suppressed the earthbenders in the show. But the earthbenders in the movie have full access to the entire world and thus to the earth itself. So this whole sentence from Sokka, that's the Fire Nation's plan, suppress all other bending, I don't see how that's going to be possible for the earthbenders if you allow them access to the earth itself. Aang says, how did this happen to your village, earthbending father? Fire Nation sent soldiers. We fought them and defeated them. Then they sent their machines, huge machines made of metal. There was nothing we could do. Those who could not bend were allowed to live in peace if we were imprisoned. So here's another mention of their machines, but we never see any of these so-called machines in the actual movie itself. And the thing is, these machines from the Fire Nation are not perfect. These machines are not perfect deterrents against people who can bend, because the way these tanks worked, because they're basically tanks, Fire Nation tanks, they basically could be stopped if an earthbender pinned them to the ground or trapped them underground. These machines are basically useless against actual skilled benders in the show, especially if the Order of the White Lotus is a good example. These machines were good until actual professional benders got wind of it, and then these tanks just turned into basic fodder stuff. But for this guy to say there was nothing we could do, oh please. That's not how earthbenders behave, especially if they are in tune with their bending. Very little can stand in the way of an earthbender. I mean, look at Toph. Toph is a great example of an unstoppable earthbender. Even when she was stuck in an area with metal, she created a new type of bending to get herself out of her own limitation. Not only was she blind, but she learned to bend metal which is something that used to be a deterrent, used to be something that could actually hinder earthbenders. But she developed her own brand new type of bending that would allow her to turn one of her own weaknesses into a strength. And she mastered that. She mastered metal bending and even taught it to others so that it became a commonplace thing for many earthbenders to circumnavigate one of their biggest weaknesses. Because if an earthbender cannot touch the earth, then their connection to being able to bend is really pretty much cut off. If an earthbender is not able to touch the ground whatsoever, then their connection to their bending is pretty much negated a little bit. But Toph developing metal bending allowed them to circumnavigate that entire weakness and give them access to being able to access the earth once again. So this whole speech from this guy saying, then they sent their machines, huge machines made of metal, there was nothing we could do. Sure, Toph does not exist in this movie yet. Well, she does not exist in this movie at all, and neither does the other books, such as like the Book of Water and Book of Fire, because the movie did so horribly. We'll, thank God, never see them disrespect the Avatar: The Last Airbender series ever again. But this whole concept of there was absolutely nothing we could do, that just doesn't sound very Earthbender-like to me. That's just me, but it just doesn't sound like something an Earthbender would say. Well, they came in with our tanks, and even though we have years of earthbending experience, yeah, we just kind of gave up. Earthbenders are very inventive when it comes to their bending. If they're not creating giant pillars to launch them into the air, or using the earth to get themselves across distances quickly, or basically building an entire city like Ba Sing Se, or creating an entire delivery system in Bumi's kingdom, you can't tell me that they couldn't have figured out a way to combat these big Fire Nation tanks. But let's read on. Aang says, Earthbenders, why are you acting this way? You are powerful and amazing people. You don't need to live like this. There is earth right beneath your feet. The ground is an extension of who you are. Why does Aang have to explain to these earthbenders the obvious? Why? See, here's the thing. I'm looking at this line. There is earth right beneath your feet. That alone should prompt a couple of earthbenders to get cocky and think, you know what? He's right. Let's start bending and get ourselves out of this situation. The firebenders need fire in order to try and combat us. So let's use our earthbending to cover up any flames and pretty much negate the access to fire for these firebenders in this movie. That's what smart people would do. But unfortunately, there were no smart people in the making of this movie. So, that whole concept, that whole idea that I just came up with, earthbenders just bend all the fire away from the Fire Nation. They literally could have done it and have so many different ways. There are multiple canisters of fire and open flames all throughout the camp. You mean to tell me that there are no earthbenders who thought that, well, maybe if I just shift my foot this way, it'll cause a hole to open up underneath this fire, and then I close it back up, and that eliminates one flame. And then you create a stone pillar with some earthbending that shoots off other canisters into the air and makes it so that the firebenders don't have access to those hanging lanterns of fire either. You mean to tell me that none of these earthbenders in this movie thought of using their bending to get rid of an opposing bending force that the Fire Nation would have used against them, and not a single one thought to do that? You mean to tell me that these earthbenders who have access to the earth directly underneath their feet don't think at all, basically. They don't think at all and try and use their bending in either some sneaky, underhanded ways to eliminate all the sources of fire that the Fire Nation has around them. They don't think of doing that in order to get the upper hand against the Fire Nation, because once the Fire Nation doesn't have any fire around them and the Firebenders can't bend any fire, all the Fire Nation really has are weapons. But against a skilled bender, those weapons mean absolutely nothing. But Ong has to tell the Earthbenders and remind them of who they are for them to get into their heads that, you know what? This random kid who just showed up out of nowhere with these Airbender tattoos, I'm glad he's here to remind us of who we are. I mean, we completely forgot before he came here, but since he's here now he's able to remind us of who we are, so now we can stand and defend ourselves. You are powerful and amazing people. You don't need to live like this. No duh. They just choose to because the Earthbenders in this movie are lazy. Earthbenders are a hardy and very difficult to subdue nation. At least they are in the show. The fact that Ba Sing Se was able to stand so long against the pretty much world domination plan of the Fire Nation in the show just establishes that Earthbenders are not to be trifled with. They're pretty much the only nation that had absolutely no problem standing up against the Fire Nation, due to how difficult it is to beat an Earthbender. I'm surprised that a pro-Earthbender makes themselves Earth armor even though they could. Psycho, there is so much wrong with this movie. There is so much creativity that is in the actual show itself that we see dozens upon dozens upon dozens of benders showing off their creativity in their bending, that there's absolutely no reason why it makes sense. It absolutely makes no sense that not a single bender here who has full access to their element doesn't think of doing something. They have to be reminded of who they are as a nation by some random kid they have absolutely no idea who is, in order for them to get this sense of inspiration again. But let me continue. Let me read this line again from Aang, because we're almost done with Act 2. We'll continue Act 2B, The Blue Spirit, and Act 3, The Siege of the North, in a completely different voice stream. But continuing, Aang says, "Earthbenders, why are you acting this way? You are powerful and amazing people. You don't need to live like this. There is Earth right beneath your feet." Just explain the obvious to them. Explain to these Earthbenders who require the Earth to bend, who are able to bend the Earth underneath them. Remind them exactly where they're on. Remind them, because it's like such simplistic stuff like that needs to be explained. The Earth is right beneath you. Oh, it is? I thought this was dirty air, and we were just floating. I thought this was solid water, and it just rubbed off in your hands. I thought this was dry fire, and it just crackled whenever you walked on it. Thank you for telling us that there is Earth right beneath our feet. The ground is an extension of who you are. The Earthbenders are dismissive and non-responsive. Aang says, if the Avatar had returned, would that mean anything to you? Earth Kingdom prisoner. The Avatar is dead. If he was here, he would protect us. See, now they're already establishing the Avatar as a crutch so that they don't have to do anything themselves. The Avatar is dead. If he was here, he would protect us. Earthbenders don't need the Avatar to protect them. Benders don't need the Avatar to protect them. The Avatar is one who's supposed... Sure, the Avatar is a person who's supposed to... You know what? Let's do this. Let's do this. Let me pull up the Avatar itself. Okay. The Avatar, formerly initially when Wan permanently fused with Rava during the harmonic convergence of 9829 BG, is the human embodiment of light and peace through the connection with the avatar spirit. As the only physical being with the ability to bend all four elements, it is considered the avatar's duty to master the four bending arts and use that power to keep balance and peace among the four nations of the world, as well as between mankind and spirits. Nowhere does it say that the avatar protects everybody. Nowhere does it say that the avatar is supposed to be like this superhero that comes in and saves people that need saving. The avatar is meant to keep balance and peace among the four nations of the world, as well as between mankind and spirits. But nowhere does it say that the avatar is supposed to be this person that just comes to the rescue of people just because. Because then the avatar becomes like this unnecessary crutch that everyone just looks to save them, rather than try and figure things out on their own. So this whole line of this guy complaining, saying, if the avatar had returned, if the avatar is dead, if he was here, he would protect us. Aang is speaking to a big old group of imprisoned earthbenders. The earthbenders don't need the avatar to save them. So continuing on, we still got a couple more lines to go before the end of Act 2A. So Aang says, "My name is Aang, and I am the avatar," unhoods himself to reveal his airbending tattoos. I don't see why the Fire Nation would have allowed him to keep his hood up. Up until this point, they probably would have ripped it off in order to see his face, especially considering the Fire Nation guys that were getting tiny stones bended at them from behind a tree, and it really hurt. They would have taken the hood off of Aang to see what his face looked like, to establish him as a prisoner, and then taken him. They wouldn't have allowed him to keep his hood on. That's just dumb. How do you take someone hostage? How do you take someone prisoner and not establish who they are? Not see who their faces are? Why would you allow this person to keep a hood up, to keep who they are a mystery? That just makes them even more unpredictable if you're imprisoning them. Sorry, just a lot of things conflict here with this script. It's just dumb. The script is just dumb. And now I kind of want to read the bad scripts of other series as well, such as The Force Awakens, The Last Jedi, and The Rise of Skywalker, because we all know how dumb the sequel trilogy is. But continuing, Aang says, "My name is Aang, and I am the Avatar." The Avatar unhoods himself to reveal his airbending tattoos. "I ran away, but I'm back now." What does that matter? These people don't care if you ran away. Why are you telling them? Why are you? Oh, this script. This script annoys me. I gotta take my headphones off. I don't even know why I had these headphones on for the past 2 hours. But this script annoys me so much. What does it matter if you're telling them that you ran away? You're just telling people that you're a coward for running and painting a picture like, well, the Avatar ran away. Why is he back now? Is he just going to run away again? It's just going to fill people with self-doubt. Why are you telling them that you ran away? What significance does it hold for you to tell these people that you ran away, but I'm back now? What does it matter? It doesn't matter! I read this script and I feel, and I be placed in a bewilderment. I'm reading this script and I just sit down and I read it, and it just fills me with such angst and such unnecessary anger. Like, this doesn't make sense. "My name is Aang, and I am the Avatar," unhoods himself to reveal his airbending tattoos. "I ran away, but I'm back now. It's time for you to stop doing this." Because words work so well in this universe. Fire Nation Prison Guard. "The Avatar would have to be an airbender. Are you an airbender, boy?" So no Fire Nation soldier knows the description of the air nomads themselves, of the airbenders. If Katara says that the Fire Nation eliminated all of the airbenders, wouldn't the Fire Nation have a good idea what airbenders look like? The avatar would have to be an airbender. Are you an airbender, boy? Airbenders are known by their specific clothing and known for the arrows on top of their heads. Since Aang took off his hood and reveals the tattoos on his head, that would prompt at least some sensible Fire Nation soldier to question that, hey, wait a minute. I know we haven't seen an airbender in years, but airbenders look exactly like this boy right here. Could he possibly be an airbender? At least some Fire Nation soldiers would be suspicious and question it. But no, this dude's all like, the Avatar would have to be an airbender. Are you an airbender? Like, there are no people here in this entire movie that have deductive reasoning at all and put two and two together. But now we cut to Katara angrily pushing the soldier away. Leave him alone, says Katara. The prison guard is furious, then tries to grab Katara, but Aang uses airbending to push him away. Now, here's the thing. Whenever bending happens in this movie, it doesn't look right. It doesn't flow. I don't care if the actor who portrayed Aang has some skills in martial arts. You can't tell me that the people who developed this movie couldn't make it so that the bending itself flowed with his movements and not just happened as like a series of button presses or quick time event button prompts and then it happens. Fire Nation head prison guard. How is he doing that? This boy called himself the Avatar. You remember, the guy said that the Avatar would have to be an airbender. You see this boy bending air. You see it with your own eyes. And you question, how is he doing that? There isn't a single Fire Nation soldier here that puts two and two together and comes up with the idea that this boy called himself the Avatar. We, the Fire Nation, know that the Avatar would have been an airbender. This boy in front of us is an airbender. Yet one of you still asks, how is he doing that? Because he's an airbender, you idiot! Sorry, I had to put my mic far away from me. It's just that moments of this script where it shows a character to be so inherently stupid. It just annoys me. How is he doing that? Aang says, I don't want to hurt anyone. Fire Nation head prison guard. All airbenders should be dead. Kill him. Firebenders, positions. Sokka says, okay, everyone can help us now. The earthbending boy throws a pebble behind the lead soldier. He turns around and bends a flame from the nearby fire pit at the boy. The father raises an earth barrier to protect his son. The other earthbenders watch the event unfold and rise with a renewed sense of hope. Then it says, Katara says, don't be afraid. Then we have one big massive narration moment here for the script. Seeking to restore order, the lead soldier with another firebender launches a large flame towards the father and the boy, but it is blocked by a large barrier, which 6 earthbenders raise in unison. Another earthbender raises a rock and accelerates it at the other soldier, and earth blocks a flame attack from the lead soldier. So here's my thing. You only really need one earthbender to create a large barrier, especially one the size that you see in the movie. So for 6 earthbenders to need to raise a barrier the size that it's shown in the movie, the barrier should have been not only super large, but also should have been able to completely crush and kill all of those Fire Nation soldiers if 6 earthbenders raised a large stone wall in unison. The more benders who work together to do their bending and to coincide with one another, the larger the structure. One earthbender, especially if their skill, are capable of raising large barriers on their own. If you get more than one bender in a location, then the conjoining bending will be far larger than one bender can do on their own. So, if you look at the scene, and it exists out there on YouTube, if you look at this scene and watch these 6 benders just stomp in unison in like this stepping crew type motion, and they just create like a barrier that one bender can create on their own, that's just unnecessary manpower. Or laziness, if you think about it, which means that if the barrier that was created by those 6 benders was split up between them, then they created very small barriers and just joined them together to create one big one. So it took 6 benders to create a large barrier to block a large flame, and I say large in parentheses, and it's unnecessary. And then another bender does a whole bunch of different martial arts moves just to float a rock in the air and then throw it at someone. They don't stomp into the ground, causing a chunk of rock to fly up into the air, and then they either punch the rock or they kick the rock, as earthbenders have been known to do. He just does a bunch of series of moves from Tekken, the rock floats, and then it gets launched at a guy. Earthbenders are known to be very physical with their bending. When they stomp into the ground, they use their bodies to launch these chunks of earth at their opponents. If they stomp into a ground, if they stomp into the ground, it'll cause numerous things to happen, such as cause a rock pillar to jump up right in front of them, or it cause a chunk of earth to fly into the air. Now, sometimes it tends to be that they cause a chunk to float in the air, and then they either physically punch the rock towards the opponent at blinding speeds, or they use their feet and they kick it. Earthbenders are quite possibly the most physical of all benders. So, seeing people bend in this movie, specifically earthbenders, and you never see an earthbender raise a pillar in front of them and then punch said pillar, and it causes wherever they hit to shoot out chunks of rock, because it has been done in the show. That's how ingenious and creative bending actually is. If an earthbender props up a pillar to protect themselves, then they can also use that same pillar to use it as a little mini platform where they can start punching into the pillar and start launching smaller dangerous projectiles at their opponent, using something that they once used to shield themselves as an offensive technique. That is how creative bending actually is. But unfortunately, in this movie, and all of its shortcomings and travesties, they can't even get the real concepts of differentiated bending down. But continuing on, because I'm not even done with this narration here. We're almost done with this script for Act 2A. So let's continue. Seeking to restore order, the lead soldier with another firebender launches a large flame towards the father and the boy, but it is blocked by a large barrier which 6 earthbenders raise in unison. You didn't need 6 earthbenders to raise a barrier to protect 2 people. It was unnecessary. Another earthbender raises a rock and accelerates it at the other soldier. Not punches the rock so it can go at blinding speeds or kicks the rock so it can seem like actual earthbending. Just levitates it and then in a series of unnecessary motions just telekinetically launches it at the other soldier. And earth blocks a flame attack from the lead soldier. Sokka takes down the lead soldier while Aang takes out another. After a few more airbending moves from Aang and a boomerang attack thrown by Sokka, the remaining soldiers retreat. Outside the prison, Aang takes out a few more soldiers in the village. After everything is settled, the villagers break open a shed holding all tools related to bending. Earthbenders didn't need tools. Earth was their tool. I don't remember that. I don't remember that in the show. See, there are some instances of earthbenders being able to use tools such as, Avatar Kyoshi. And she used fans. But, of course, with her being the Avatar, she could use all elements. And the fans were more just like, I guess it helped differentiate her from other members of other previous avatars because she would use a fan. And it wasn't like it helped her enhance her bending. It was just because she was also a Kyoshi warrior. And Kyoshi warriors also use fans, along with other things. But after everything is settled, the villagers break open a shed holding all tools related to bending. Old Man of Kyoshi Town. They took away any tools related to bending. Momo goes in the shed and knocks over a waterbending scroll. The villager picks up the scroll and gives it to Katara. Oh, you mean this scroll that was in the hands of pirates that Katara stole in the show? That made more sense? Kyoshi villager.
The Fire Nation took this scroll from a member of your water tribe.
How do you know? Do you even know what tribe Katara is from? Or are you just assuming that since she's a waterbender, then it must have come from her tribes exclusively? Katara says,
a waterbending scroll. This is rare. My mom told me about these.
Aang is taken to the statue of Avatar Kyoshi. Old Man of Kyoshi Town.
This was you when you were born an earthbender 2 lifetimes ago. You came to our village. Avatar Kyoshi loved games.
Where are you going with this conversation? You're bringing up Avatar Kyoshi. This was you when you were born an earthbender 2 lifetimes ago. You came to our village. Avatar Kyoshi loved games. That is such a senile old person thing to say. You're talking about how Avatar Kyoshi was an earthbender 2 lifetimes ago, and Avatar Kyoshi came to our village, and then you just break off into something completely different. Avatar Kyoshi loved the games. What are you going with this conversation? And Aang says, I do too. I mean, I still do. Aang later meets with Sokka and Katara. Sokka says, a lot of the villages in this part of the Earth Kingdom are occupied by the Fire Nation, like this village was. They prey on the weakest towns and villages. We should go visit some of these towns, Aang.
Ah, boy.
I feel like if word spreads of the Avatar helping these Earthbenders reestablish themselves as a powerful nation get around, they don't need to go to these towns to free them. They paint this picture like no one can do anything unless the Avatar is there. The Avatar is not an instant win button the moment they enter into any part of the world. I mean, they are, but they paint the Avatar pretty much is an instant win button, especially if they're up against other benders and the Avatar has mastered all the elements. I mean, not much can stand in the way of a fully realized Avatar who's mastered everything. But they paint the picture like no one is capable of defending themselves unless Aang is there in this movie. It is disappointing and completely stupid. Sorry, I'm just not a fan of this whole script and everything associated with it. Wow, I'm going on 3 hours. Going on almost 3 hours, just 10 minutes left, pretty much. But Sokka is saying a lot of the villages in this part of the Earth Kingdom are occupied by the Fire Nation like this village was. They prey on the weakest towns and villages. We should go visit some of these towns, Ong. And I'm just thinking, so you mean to tell me that no one is capable of defending themselves? Everyone just bends the knee to the Fire Nation so effortlessly? The Fire Nation has fire everywhere so that no one can ever pose a threat to them whatsoever? And then Aang says, I need to tell you something. Katara says, what is it, Aang? Aang says, I ran away before they trained me to be the Avatar. I don't know how to bend the other elements. And Katara says, why did you run away? And Aang says, the day they told me I was the Avatar, how are we weak when they have Earth below them? So therefore they're not weak. Psycho, I went on a full-on tangent before you showed up, talking about how the pictures they paint of all the other nations are just so incredibly inaccurate and quite possibly insulting to the real source material. How are you an Earthbender? The Fire Nation does not have you imprisoned in a place where you can't access Earth. Yet you do nothing to fight against the Fire Nation that requires, in this movie, an actual heat source in order to fight you. If they have no heat source, they have no way to bend. And then we're told that there's a tool shed that the Fire Nation were keeping tools related to bending in. Earthbenders don't need tools to bend. Airbenders, I understand. They have a staff that also doubles as a glider that allows them to manipulate their elements. But let me be right back. We're almost done with the script, and I also have to eat lunch, so I will be right back. Hold fast, everyone. I'll be right back. We're almost done. We only got a little bit left. Yes, we only have a little bit left. Almost done, but let me be right back. Hold tight. Okay, I'm back. CJ, if you're here, welcome. Psycho, thanks for keeping him informed. I'm sorry, I just started laughing with my sisters downstairs as I got my lunch. I got myself some hot dogs with some... Got my chili dogs here with my tater tots and my big old cup of sweet tea. Let's go ahead and bring this to a close real quick. So... Okay, so Aang is explaining, the day they told me I was the Avatar, they said I could never have a normal life, that I could never have a family. They said it cannot work with the responsibilities of the Avatar. And then Katara says, why can't the Avatar have a family? Well, when a man and a woman love each other very much... And Aang says, I asked that. They said that that's the sacrifice the Avatar always has to make. Sokka says, okay, so what if we found you teachers? Teachers to teach you bending. Which element would you have to learn first? Aang says, water. Sorry, I had a little cough coming in. Water. Water comes after air in the cycle. Air, water, earth, fire. Sokka says, but there are really powerful benders in the Northern Water Tribe. My dad told me about it before he left. It's led by a princess because her father died. There are teachers there, but all the way on the other side of the world. And Aang says, we can get there on Appa. And Sokka says, that's what I was thinking. And maybe we can stop in the villages on the way. Start a change in the war in these small villages. Should we try it? And Aang says, yes, we should. The team of Aang, Sokka, Katara, Momo, and Appa. Why are you including Momo in this? Because Momo's done jack. The team of Aang... I don't know why that's trying to linger in there. The team of Aang, Sokka, Katara, Momo, and Appa set out on the journey to the north. Along the way, they visit the villages where Aang announces the Avatar has returned. In villages that are still occupied by Fire Nation soldiers, Aang uses his airbending to defeat them and liberate the village from their grip. Doesn't say that the Earth Kingdom and their citizens join in Aang in order to help themselves get liberated. No, it's specifically Aang who helps them get freed from the Fire Nation, because apparently you need someone else to tell you that, hey, I'm an earthbender. I can fight on my own. I can feel the earth. I can see. I can fight. In villages that are still occupied by Fire Nation soldiers, Aang uses his airbending to defeat them and liberate the village from their grip. Meanwhile, Zuko and two soldiers, disguised as travelers of the Earth Kingdom, visit the first village Aang liberated. They also enter the former prison camp and look around. And that ends Act 2A. The Avatar returned. Act 2B, the Blue Spirit. And Act 3, the Siege of the North, is the last bit of this script I have to read through. But that is going to be in another separate stream entirely. Now, for the sake of time, and while my food is still hot, I'm going to bring this to a close, but it's just... reading this script is quite possibly... The script does nothing in the way of painting up an exciting picture. Because you can hear what I'm describing to you. And if the script was actually good and phantasmagorical and just filled with wonder and splendor and excitement, then it could paint a picture that you can just visualize on your own. Like, the entire time I was reading through the script, I was visualizing better said lines. I was visualizing better visuals for this movie that actually made sense. But due to the nature of this film and its script, it doesn't paint a picture of wonder. It just paints a picture of, you mean to tell me that M. Night never watched the show and he still tried to make a live-action adaptation of a show he never watched? And he thought it was going to be successful. The problem with Shyamalan is that he just defaults to the exact same trope over and over, the same way that Michael Bay defaults to the exact same trope. Shyamalan always deflects towards his constant need to have twist endings and hiding secret things in the beginning and then it becoming apparent at the end, but then it doesn't really make sense because the film doesn't go out of its way to make sense of any of it, really. And Michael Bay does the exact same thing where he just includes nothing but countless explosions in every single film he has ever been featured in. If it's not exploding, it's not really a Michael Bay film. Shyamalan, however, has shown that he can be incredibly disrespectful to source material due to his, I guess, need to prove himself as a director, because let's face it, he hasn't had a really big successful movie since, I want to say, what is it called? I think his recent successful film that actually did really, really well in terms of being respectful to the source material and stuff like that, I think this last good one was Split. I think that was his last good film. Of course, Glass kind of left people with a foul taste in their mouth due to how it treated some characters that they all loved, and it basically brought about a conclusion that pretty much killed off every one of their characters in Glass. And Shyamalan has not had a good film since. But Shyamalan taking a beloved franchise such as the Avatar: The Last Airbender, turning it into a live adaptation and trying to squeeze an entire first season into an hour-long movie. Now, mind you, this stream has been 3 hours long. And we just reached the halfway point of the script that I just read through. So, and I've been complaining about just how bad the script actually is. So take into account, imagine if Shyamalan was actually greenlit to do the last two books, such as Earth and Fire. Can you imagine just how much he'll disrespect Azula? Can you imagine just how much they would disrespect Sozin's Comet, the history of Avatar Roku, and the history of how the Fire Nation began everything, and how lackluster Fire Lord Ozai in the final battle against Aang would have done, because they've clearly shown that they can't even do basic bending right on an introductionary level. Can you imagine a firebender boosted by Sozin's Comet in a Shyamalan film done with the exact same choreography that they seem to think is working so well? It would be a travesty, which is why I'm glad that the show exists and that I have it on Blu-ray and I can look at an actual show with actual character development, with actual world building, with actual plot, with actual good choreography that makes sense, with a story that makes sense, and lines don't seem just thrown in there because it's a Nickelodeon film. I'm glad the original show exists. But we're going to have to continue this script another time. All I know is, for this to be one of my voices streams, this was pretty much just me just reading through this entire script in its entirety. And it's just so annoying. I might read through the sequel trilogy for Star Wars because, oh my goodness, there's just so much wrong with that entire series, and I hate that. I hate the entire series sequel trilogy more than I hate Shyamalan's Last Airbender movie. And I believe there are no other movies I hate more than the sequel trilogy of Star Wars, because just so much is wrong with it. And thanks to Mahler and Rags, the EFAP crew, opening my eyes to just how bad it is, I feel like I have the ability to offer my own take on just how bad the decline of the Star Wars franchise has truly become with the sequel trilogy. But I'll dedicate another stream to me reading through the scripts of the sequel trilogy. So just look forward to that. But That's all I got for you guys right now. I want to go ahead and bring this to a close so I can go ahead and eat my food for today and then just chill and relax on my day off. Might take me another nap, might watch me a movie. All I know is I enjoyed this voice session where I started with some voices and I was messing with my voice modulator and everything. But reading through the script of Avatar: The Last Airbender, the last Shyamalan Bender, it just let me know that just because even as a voice actor, you need to have good lines. And me reading through this script, it just felt so disjointed and so disconnected, and conversations were being started that led absolutely nowhere. The best possible thing for a voice actor is for the lines that he speaks to make sense, and for it not to seem like he's just saying these lines just to be saying lines for the sake of lines. It has to actually make sense. And the last Airbender script is just showing you how to do that incorrectly. But nonetheless, hope you all enjoyed. Can't wait to see you all in my next video. And if you're new to the channel and you enjoyed what you saw here today, then consider subscribing because I am always looking forward to entertaining you. So have a fantastic day. And once again, as always, later, peoples.